I think chief among what you're talking about is Snapdragon 8 Elite, right? And the technology shift is to the in-house design processor. But the question for you, Cristiano, is the same as it's been for quite a long time, which is what is fundamentally different through this processor in how we use our smartphone, the capabilities that an AI smartphone has?
Very good. Ed, hello from Maui. Good talking to you. We're incredibly excited with the announcements we made yesterday, and we have more announcements today. This is our 9th edition of the Snapdragon Summit. And what's more exciting about what we're doing with 8 Elite is going to be the Snapdragon platform that does two things. With our new custom Oryon CPU, it restores the leadership position in performance to the Android ecosystem. Smartphones powered by the 8 Elite are going to be the fastest smartphones in the world, period. But that's only half the story. The other part of the story, it is the platform that has incredible computing capabilities for AI. And we present a vision of the future, how the constructs that we are used to in the smartphone of OSs and apps and app stores are going to fundamentally change as we have agents that are going to do a lot of the use cases for us. One of the most exciting things for Qualcomm of generative AI is that now computers can speak the language of humans. And that's where we are. There's a Snapdragon, there's a display, there's a human.
Right.
And that transition is about to happen. So we built the platform for that.
The forecasters, Cristiano, see the smartphone market growing, driven by Android. And what surprised me about this generation of processor is you get them into handsets quite quickly. Have you done the math on how you see that convert into market growth, how quickly the AI smartphone is a top-line driver for you?
Look, that's the multi-billion-dollar question. So I'm going to try to give you an answer, even though it's very hard to predict. I think it's very easy to see, and I have conviction in that. Within the next 5 years, we're probably going to have all of us with an AI smartphone. The problem is you have to wait for the new use cases to come up. It reminds me of the transition from feature phones to smartphones. When in the beginning, we talk about apps. We have 10 apps, then became hundreds of apps, then thousands of apps. And we started to see that happening right now. We have like 20 AI different use cases, and maybe that's going to become 100. So I think we are on a trajectory to get to that point. Maybe 5 years is where that transition will be concluded, and hopefully what we all expect to see is the smartphone market is going to grow, and we're going to see a new upgrade cycle.
When we talk about, though, the growth in that market, Cristiano, are we talking about new entrants into that space? And I'm talking on the customer side here. Or is this simply converting the existing customer base that's already out there?
I think the typical answer that you're going to provide to this question is you probably expect existing players in the smartphone world to just build AI-capable smartphones. But it's really hard to predict. Every time we have a change in the industry, I think the mobile industry is one that every generation of wireless players did change. So that could happen too. I think what we're really excited about it is actually not really the players, but how the experience is going to change, how the devices are going to change, and that's going to require a lot of computing power for AI, and that's what Qualcomm's going to do. Qualcomm's really been positioning itself to be the company doing AI at the edge, and that's not only phones, it's PCs, it's cars, it's smart glasses, and I think that's the story of the company right now.
With regard to that story, and I'm almost asking this question on behalf of investors, and I would like you to answer it for investors. To a certain extent, this stock has been left behind with regards to the AI focus that this market has had all year long. Does these new chips and the new products that they will go into, will that change the narrative to the upside for investors on both the top and the bottom line?
Look, I have a slightly different opinion. If you look where the valuation of the company is right now, we're starting to get credit for the fact that we created new growth markets for Qualcomm beyond handsets. The stock had a lower multiple in the past because most of our revenue, and it's still a number one business, is mobile, and mobile was not growing. But what we have done is something different. We realized there are new end markets for our technology, and we built an automotive position. I think the Snapdragon digital chassis now is the key asset for the industry in automotive. We have a $45 billion contracted pipeline. 1/3 of that is ADAS and autonomy. We entered the PC space and the transition of PC to Microsoft Pilot Plus AIs, and we're going to start building industrial. So actually, we have been building new business for Qualcomm, and that has had a positive impact on our multiple. With that, this AI transition is about to happen from the data center to the edge, and we're just preparing ourselves for that.
In the smartphone context, what's happening in China is so interesting. Let's compare with Apple, right, in the iPhone 16. They're being rewarded in that market on Apple Intelligence features that aren't yet out in China and won't be for some time. So when you think about Snapdragon 8 Elite and your kind of first mover advantage, do you feel you have a first mover advantage in China when it comes to the AI smartphone?
So let me talk about our smartphone business in China. We have been powering the premium devices of all the Chinese brands, companies like Honor, OnePlus, Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi. And what we have seen, the China internet is a different ecosystem. All of those companies has been creating AI use cases. And what we see in China that we like, the market has stabilized it, but we see consumers moving up. So while the market doesn't grow as much, what is really growing is the premium tier. Consumers want to buy a better device. And what we have seen this year over year. So we're actually happy with our position in China. And as we go into other markets, we're seeing our partnerships in China increasing. One of the examples, we're now partnering with every single Chinese EV company as well for automotive.
Cristiano, you're dedicating a day to those new chips in automotive. One of the questions from our audience is whether that's now becoming an isolated business, or if there's a kind of flywheel effect through the diversification efforts that you kind of were helming.
So thank you for the question. Right now on stage, we're announcing the most powerful processor we ever done in the history of our company, which is our new platform for automotive. We're announcing 2 chips, is Snapdragon Elite Cockpit and Snapdragon Elite Ride. And that is being designed for what we believe is going to happen with software-defined vehicles. Cars are going to get better over time. It is future-proofing the AI capabilities for Gen AI use cases when you're behind the wheel. Just as an example, is a 12x increase in performance versus the prior automotive chip that we have. It's an order of magnitude increase. And I think the way we look into this is we build a strong automotive business by being the digital platform of choice for all the car makers. Now we wanted to future-proof that platform for the future Gen AI use cases running on cars at the edge.
I've got to ask you the tough question here, Cristiano, and that's really about your ambitions to grow this company and expand it through acquisition. Of course, you've seen the media reports about your interests, your presumed interest in Intel. Do you have any intent on pursuing that deal anytime this year?
Lately, I'm getting this question all the time. Look, we don't comment on rumors, but I'm going to tell you what we're actually busy doing. What we're busy doing is we have a unique opportunity for Qualcomm for the PC space. We saw the entry point driven by 2 transitions. One transition is mobile PC conversions. The other one is PC becoming an AI platform with the Microsoft launch of Copilot Plus. So what we did, we built the fastest processor platform, which is X Elite, and right now it is still the fast performing processor. Both the incumbents in the PC, based on our announcement, created new products and accelerated the new products to compete with us, and that wasn't enough. So we see now an incredible opportunity for us in the PC, and especially as PC makers have questions about their future, they look at Qualcomm as a great player.
Cristiano, the interest on the whole Intel story was because you made progress on your own, ARM-based processors, Qualcomm processors, so YX86. Just give yourself a score out of 10 on how you did on AI PC so far.
Look, given the amount of skepticism that we got about people telling we will not succeed in PCs and would not be able to compete, I'll give us a very high grade. And the platform Design traction is awesome. We launched 22 different laptops across all brands: Dell, HP, Lenovo, Asus, Acer, Samsung, and we continue to see design traction, especially as Microsoft prepares a transition for Windows to an AI. And one thing that we were tasked by Microsoft to do, and we did it, we restored the performance leadership of computing back to the Windows ecosystem. That's a great testimony of, I think, the Qualcomm engineering capability and our focus in growing this business.
There would certainly be a complement, though, to getting at least some part of Intel's business, whether it's the programmable chip division, which we already know that Intel has plans to try to spin off, and other aspects of that as well. Do you see a complement there at all?
Look, it's important to understand the Qualcomm strategy, and we have been very clear about that. Our strategy is pretty simple. We define our company. We have three assets: everything wireless connectivity, and we take pride in being the number one in cellular and Wi-Fi on everything wireless, high performance, low power compute, and artificial intelligence for the edge. And what we did, we applied those three technologies to all markets that are growing, and we could leverage our technology for phones. So we went from phones to cars to the PCs, and now industrial. And that has been part of our strategy. We did all organically with some of the small acquisitions. We feel we have a very competitive roadmap, and we're thinking about the new. What is the new innovation that is coming for those markets? And that's what we're driving. I will remain focused on that.
Cristiano, the Qualcomm of today is very different to the one that I first met 6 years ago. When I speak to investors and analysts, they do worry about kind of billions of dollars of lost revenue, particularly with key customer Apple and modem. But the question I get a lot for you is whether these kind of newer business lines, Snapdragon 8 Elite, the automotive side, account for, make up for some of that lost legacy business going forward from 2025.
Look, I love answering this question because, that has been the story of Qualcomm of the past. Every investor saying, look, you have the best modems in the world. You have a very strong position with Apple, but, they're eventually going to do their own modem, going to lose this business. So we took a completely different approach. When I became CEO, I had an investor day in 2021, and we said they're going to be that revenue is going to be removed from the model. And we are going to be creating new growth markets for Qualcomm, and we have a much bigger SAM opportunity than we have with mobile. We're just executing on this, and the results are showing. Look, $45 billion of contracted pipeline in automotive is not a small number. And you have seen in our earnings results, automotive has been record quarter over quarter because we're gaining share. That's the reason we are getting to the PC. That's the reason we're getting to industrial, because at the end of the day, it's not only about this one customer revenue, whether we have it or we don't have it.
Yeah.
It's actually, can we operate in growth markets and expand the company's SAM? And that's what we're doing.
And this is exactly what we've heard from investors, exactly what we've heard from analysts. They want to see that diversification. And just to be fair, Cristiano, they've given you a lot of pats on the back so far. There's still a long way to go. And I do want to circle, as we end this conversation, back to the automotive space, because we've been focusing a lot on that today on this show. And there are concerns here that we've sort of reached some sort of bump in the road with the adoption of new vehicles, whether it's EVs or autonomous vehicles, or really just vehicles that are much more sort of technologically inclined. Where do you fit into that space longer term? Is that going to be a bigger market? And more importantly, is it going to be a bigger market for Qualcomm?
Very good. So, look, Romain, one of the unique things of our automotive business, we are kind of immune to that. Our position is not dependent on electrification or internal combustion. Our position is not really dependent of the shifts that you have in share across different companies. Because what we have done, we saw the cars are going to become digital computers on wheels. Car companies are going to become tech companies, and we built a platform for the car companies. And what happened is that had resonated well. So we're designed across all brands, all the Koreans, all the Japanese, the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese. Every single car company now is using some portion of the Snapdragon digital cockpit. And what is happening with our results have been independent of the automotive market and more about gaining share. And as the new cars come out with our platforms, we're starting to see that go into revenue. We made a projection of $4 billion by 26, and then $9 billion by the end of the decade, and we're tracking that.